time for another round of brandy. Candid conversations over cocktails about all things brand with your hosts, Reilly Newman and Scott Saunders, the brand developers behind Motif Brands.
Today, we're kicking off just kind of straight into the discussion of blanding.
Blanding.
Not branding.
Not blending.
Not blending. Not branding.
Not branding, but blanding.
As in bland.
As in flavorless, as in
plain.
Just, I don't even want to say vanilla because vanilla has more distinction than blanding.
I would almost say it's like lukewarm. It's indifferent.
It is.
It's blah.
It's run of the mill. It's right in the middle.
You know, first off, going, okay, hey, why are we talking about this, and what does that have to do with branding? First, you know, off the bat, blanding is pretty much when brands surrender or forfeit anything that's distinct about them. Because you think of the opposite of something being bland, it's something being very distinct or being very flavorful or having a very strong personality in one direction or the other.
Do you feel like would you say that we're specifically talking more visually of a brand and all of its components beyond just logo, but like just visual branding?
Yeah.
I think is what we're talking about with blanding.
Definitely on the visual aspect of going, okay, happens to be when brands give up their distinctiveness to kind of just blend in, and they surrender any originality or anything that is that stands out to just kind of fit in, or maybe just kind of feel relevant.
I think it should be safe. And here's, we wrote I think it's covered one of our one of our little mini chapters in our book, but it's the idea, the herd mentality, right? But and we talk about it, it's like, being kind of doing what everyone else. You're joining the herd. You're kind of being in the herd. But you think about it in the herd mentality for wildlife, as we see it, is it's the animals that are not within the herd, that are on the outer ring of the herd. They are the ones that are prey. They are the most vulnerable to danger. And so I feel like there is safety in numbers. We hear that all the time, and it's that goes along with the herd mentality. And joining the herd is primal to our nature.
Yeah, and so I think instinct-wise, you're like, oh, I need to blend in, I need to fit in with everyone, because we're engineered that way as people, and that makes sense. Like Scott was saying with herds or school of fish, where it disorients the predator so they can't attack and they just kind of give up. But in business world, you want to be the one who's chosen. You want to be the one that gets picked off because you want the customer to choose you. So it's kind of reverse, where you're going, no, I need to stand out. I need to not blend in. And this blanding of going, oh no, I'm gonna play it safe. I'm gonna, maybe let's see what everyone else is doing and go more that way. And it's like, yes, it is a massive flop on the design and aesthetic front, but it really comes down, it becomes a business issue very quickly, because now your sales start to drop, or you start following pricing pressure, because now you've told the audience to go, hey, you can compare us to all the other competition exactly, because we're all the same. So depending on what they're going to price, maybe the competitor, or if they're doing sales or whatever it is, you're now being held against that same light. So it's a bit of a fool's errand versus going, no, we want to be the orange among apples. So they can't compare apples to apples anymore. You need to be the orange. So they go, wait, there's something different about this one. This one's standing out. I need to take more time, either ask more questions about the company, about the product or the service, and inquire more. And that's always best for sales, because then it starts that conversation. So really, it's like, what I like to say is, like, with things like this, you have a tax that's involved. So with being the same as everyone else, there's a sameness tax that comes along with it, where you're going to start paying a premium as a business, because it's going to tax how you sell, your marketing, your business as a whole, and it's going to start weighing down in these areas that's actually going to cost you more money in the long run.
All these brands are out there trying to remain relevant to culture, to the market space. And then there's other brands that seem timeless and withstand trends, because I believe they don't chase trends, because trends are always changing, they're always evolving, and they always end up going back. And that's what's kind of funny is that I think it's kind of fun that, like, as a design like fashion and color palettes and everything kind of recycle through the years. And so right now we're seeing a lot more 80s and 90s fashion and hairstyles kind of making the circuit back. But I think the brands that don't go with the trends will eventually be trendy again if they just stick to it, because that's, again, being distinctive of what they were doing. A classic example is, like, with a lot of the luxury brands, they went to sans serif Wordmarks away from their heritage. And even brands like Saint Laurent and Calvin Klein that had more very distinct type styles. You know, Calvin Klein had very a strong serif, a treatment to it, but then it ended up changing it to a sans serif. Burberry did it. Theirs looked totally different. You look at the lineup of some of these brands that, they just kind of all started with this black on white, just sans serif font, and there's slight distinctions among them, but they all start looking the same after a while.
Yeah.
And it's shame, because I feel like that is something that, particularly with these brands where they don't necessarily have brand marks, they're dependent on their word mark, then I feel like they need to keep that distinction.
And what's crazy about it is that some of these brands have thrown away, decades and decades of history and heritage and something that has helped build their identity. Like we've talked about Jaguar before, or even Cracker Barrel, and now Ferrari with their new car design with the EV. It's like you have these brands that were built over time, and they had a distinct look about them, and that becomes a distinct brand asset. And we've talked about that before, of that really what comes down to brands is having those distinct assets that actually build to the brand's identity, builds into the perception of the brand and what people remember about it. And like we talked about on that episode about how people rebuild memories and they rebuild their memory of you, is like you need to have these distinctive assets, because that's what they're going to use to help rebuild what they think about when they do think of you. It's like, I don't know, like Porsche have certain headlights, or even like Rivian has very distinct headlights, or the iPhone used to be very distinctive, and now all of their phones have kind of copied it and like the shape of the product design. But you have to really start to consider, okay, outside of products or services, how is our brand going to be distinct? And are we just being more status quo and blanding and blending in order to feel safe, rather than going, no, we want to do things that are a little obscure. We want to do things that are truly us, because that's what's going to matter in the long run. And we've talked about Gap before, and like Scott was saying, is like you do have these trends where Gap in like 2011, they did a rebrand and they lost their iconic blue square and their serif type, and they went to like this very sans serif type. But it was because like American Apparel at the time was dominating the apparel scene, and so then they started to
they were just using Helvetica or something, super simple, and
it's a shame, because it is like, no, that's not why. That's the way Gap looks is special to the audience. And then I think it was within a couple months, like 6 months, they reverted back to the old Gap logo because people threw such a fit about it. And I think it's just part of the problem is that, okay, it's going to cost you one way or the other. It's like if you start reducing your brand to be safe and blend in, the blanding of it is like, it's going to cost you to rebrand it. And then the amount of cost is going to either cost you in the sales or having to go back and kind of flip-flop again. It's like that's going to cost you, yes, on the sales front and probably on packaging and all this other stuff, but also just on the security someone has with the brand, is that then you're making it shaky for the brand equity of someone going, oh yeah, this brand is now they're putting on a different mask, and now they're not being the person who I thought they were, and it's starting to feel a little unsafe for people. And we've mentioned it before of like, okay, brand is very human, and it's kind of like if someone starts acting different. We've all had those friends where they go off for like a summer camp or something, and then they come back and they're acting totally different, and you're kind of like, oh, you're not really yourself anymore. And it's kind of like, okay, well, the friendship starts to dwindle, and because the person is trying to be someone who they aren't, or they're trying to change who they are, and it just, as humans, that relationship starts to disintegrate.
Again, how do you refine the things that you have distinct? How do you refine them even more, rather than just erasing or covering over or dismantling and completely rebuilding? That's too much of a shakeup, I think, because again, what you're trying to do is you're trying to signal, anytime you rebrand, you're refining your main beacon, what you're signaling to the audience about your brand and what is different or make it distinctive. So every time you do that, you're signaling something's bigger and changed. If you do a radical changeover, that's kind of like signaling, that's a big step for a brand to take. And you need to be seriously changing things up if that's what you're going to do.
Yeah. And it is kind of, Scott and I talked about it previously, and it was kind of like, are these businesses and these companies, they feel this pressure to be, okay, I need to fit in, I need to feel relevant. Now, what's relevant right now? And they'll look at trends, or they'll look at who's leading in their category, or whatever it could be, and then they'll forfeit whatever made them special, to then go, well, if we just look like them, that's going to make us relevant.
If I do what they do, or if I do it how they do it, then that will make me special too, and that will increase my business. And it's like, no.
Which is so funny, because again, going back to like childhood, you'd have those kids that they would start dressing like this other kid, or start dressing like you. I had kids who would start dressing like me, or start acting like me. And then it just, if anything, it just bugs everyone. Everyone's like, no, what are you doing? Like, go be yourself. And it's the same thing with brands again, where it's like, people aren't stupid. They start to see when Android starts copying things from Apple, or PC starts copying things from Apple, or whatever it could be. It's like, you start seeing these patterns and going, oh, that's funny. Like that EV company, that little, nuance they did in the design, that looks a lot like a Tesla, or that looks a lot like this company, right? And you start seeing these things, and it's like, people aren't dumb, and they eventually can sniff it out.
Right. Like, and if you happen to miss our last episode, we brought up the rebrand of Pirate Booty, which is a snack like these corn puffs. But again, they're owned by Hershey now, correct? And we're looking across at all the other changes that Hershey's making on all their food packaging, and they're kind of all, no matter what, kind of switching this to this more unified vibe. But again, what made Pirate Booty so distinctive in the shelf, and it was funny because I think we'd recorded this episode, and then I went to the store and I took a picture because I saw a bag of the new bag of the rebrand, and I was looking for it and I couldn't find it at first, and so I took a picture and sent it to you, Reilly, and it was like, yeah, where's the Pirate Booty? Because you couldn't, it just blended in with all the other design bags, and it lost all the distinction that it had on the shelf prior. And so, it's again, that idea of just changing to change, when there was nothing new or different about the product. It's still the exact same product. So why did the bag and everything else have to look different?
Yeah. And even Design Analytics, that's a site, I guess an organization where they do a lot of testing with packaging design and what's better, what is functioning better in regards to like sales, because you can do things to packaging to improve sales. And use contrasting colors or move things around and help with hierarchy, where the customer is actually going to respond accordingly and do that. However, they brought up a good point where it's like the modernizing of packaging is almost this knee-jerk reaction of a lot of CPG brands, which are like product brands, where they're, we need to look modern, and they're stripping everything away, but then it's actually hurting the brand. And yeah, it might perform better theoretically as a shelf product, but the sacrifice of the brand isn't worth it. And so their sales actually, it backfires on them. And so it's kind of like that book I mentioned before, the long and short of it, is that you can do these things that are optimization, right? Because that's just optimization. Design is very good at optimizing things. You can optimize a product, an advertisement, a packaging design, things like that to work and leverage like psychology. But at a certain point, some things that is brand related is actually counterintuitive. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to do things a certain way. And sometimes brand does do things that are not intuitive for business, but then it works out. And that's what like Rory Sutherland always talks about, is like sometimes brand can do something where you have huge returns on it, and it's a simple little, contrarian idea or something that doesn't make sense, and it actually works for the brand. So it's not so much just, make everything optimized and modernized and look a certain way. And actually, we've talked about that before with ads and Google and everything like that. It's like, yeah, you can optimize the heck out of your ads and your clicks and your website traffic, but at what point are you just getting traffic for traffic's sake, or getting vanity metrics on social media?
I hate kind of across websites where they've been so SEO'd, like worked over their text and their messaging on their website is so SEO'd, like, every other paragraph they mention their service offering, and it's linked, and it's like, it's just so crazy, because it's like you're clearly more concerned about people coming to your site than what you're actually giving them when they get to your site as far as content.
Right. There's no soul.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's part of it, is like
branding lacks soul.
A good brand has like a soul to it, where you go, oh yeah, when I think of, In-N-Out, or when I think of Costco, like there's this relationship there. But also there's soul to it, where I think about almost like the personality, like I know them.
Brands have personality. We've talked about this before. They do. How they talk. We've talked. We have, I think, a whole episode on It's Not What You Say, But How You Say It.
Yeah, And it's kind of like when you talk with someone and they're not being themselves, I guess I would put it, where if they're always thinking about, oh, how do I say something that's not going to offend, or how do I say the correct thing? They're so worried about saying the correct thing that they're not just talking to you. And when you're just talking with a friend, it should just be like soul to soul, where you're just talking and you can say whatever you want and you're totally fine. Versus when you're talking to someone who's calculated and they're optimized and they're thinking about all these things, that's like what Scott was saying. Like when you go to a website and it's like, this isn't the brand speaking. This is the business speaking through SEO lens and trying to say the right things, right? They're so worried about saying the right things that they're not being themselves. Yeah. It's like going on like a date and meeting like your partner's, I don't know, dad or something, where it's like, oh, I'm so like, you're so concerned about saying the right thing, or like a job interview. And, and I think finally this brings around to kind of AI in it. And I've kind of thought about the whole AI slop stuff, and to me, it's like AI is just like the internet, where the internet just blew up more of what makes humans either good or bad in a lot of ways. And AI is kind of the same thing, is that it's not so much AI slop as much as it's enabled humans to make more human slop. Because we've always had like human slop. You've had people just creating content for nonstop on social media, them just posting blogs and trying to optimize, the certain keywords. It's like you ever look for a recipe and it's like, that's human slop. Most of these recipes you get online, because you don't get to the darn recipe until you're, 80% through the scroll of the entire thing.
All the ads.
They bury it, and the ads and all the story and all that junk.
And all of those recipe things, if you start off reading right at the top, it goes, go jump to recipe. It's a small little thing that you usually have, and you hit that and it go right down to the bottom, literally where here's a list of ingredients, here's the cooking instructions, bypass all of that.
Right.
Half the page them telling about why cookies are so great. It's like, just give me the recipe for the cookie.
That's why
I don't need to know the history of the cookie.
But that's human slop. So the same thing happens with if AI is about optimization, and it's the aggregate of the average, right? It's everything on average of going, okay, if it's a predictive model, like when you're using AI, it's most likely an LLM, a large language model. So it's predicting the next steps mathematically. And so the same thing happens with blanding, where it's trying to guess what the next move is by averaging it out, right? How do you hedge a guess or a bet is by averaging out, what are my chances of getting this, right? And then you're going to go towards that average to increase your chances. So the same thing happens with blanding, where you're going, okay, I'm trying to make my business better and make more money and whatever, increase revenue. What are my chances of, what do I need to do? What's my safest bet? And therein lies the problem, is that now you're doing no better than what AI slop or human slop's doing, but you're now aggregating the average of going, where is this moving, right? And that's most likely going to be based on a trend, or you're looking at the category leader and you're going to copy and paste, and that's never a good decision. So the most important thing you could do is actually hedge your bets by going, no, what's the most outlandish thing I can do? What's the most thing I could do to stand out and be distinct, and then have have a entity in a brand that's ownable, and you're starting to build that moat around it where it can't be taken from you. You have something that's protectable.
Yeah, good point.
So whether it's, your gut instinct of going, oh, I need to do something, I need to play it safe and need to blend in or do what the status quo is, or you're relying on AI or an average designer giving you average advice, you're going to land in the same spot. And you need to always go back to what makes the business special, what makes a brand special, and the strategy behind that should help fortify.
And hopefully
that.
You have an answer. I think there's a lot of small businesses out there that, when asked that question, they may not have an answer, because right from the get-go, they're just doing what everything, what everyone else is doing. It's like, I love when you go to like a big urban city like New York or something. There's like just cheap like touristy things, right? And literally there's like the same shops exactly selling the same goods, everything, like every other couple doors down, you see the same stuff, if it's plastic cell phone cases or whatever, and it just cracks me up. It's like, how do you determine which one to go to?
That's a great point though, right? Is that is someone, okay, you have all these little shops, they're all trying to make money off selling trinkets and all of that, and they are betting, or they're hedging their bet by averaging it out. Okay, what's moving? Oh, cell phone cases. Oh, the iHeart NY, or coffee mugs, or whatever it is. And those are, they're commodities. Everyone likes those things. They're easy to get. They're easy to print on. You can get them from China and do whatever. But it's a safe bet because they're just trying to move product. And, versus going, oh no, there's that one place where you can get that one thing. You have to go to this place to get that.
Yeah.
There's a big difference there.
So, hey, on that note, thanks for always checking in. We look forward to doing it again next week.
Until next time, cheers.
Cheers.